I'm always fascinated by like flawed people, obviously.
He's fascinated by me.
What's up? This is Rebel Radio.
What up? What up? This is DJ Newmark.
This is Peanut Butter Wolf.
It's your boy. It's okay.
Keep checking out Rebel Radio.
Rebel Radio.
This is Rebel Radio.
We're in the place right here. Rebel Radio is going down.
Did you say Rebel Radio?
Oh, wait. Let's do it again. Rebel Radio.
What's up, Rebels? Welcome back to Rebel Radio, the weekly show where I bring you the rebels who are shaping our culture. I'm your host, Josh Levine. Today is co-hosted by my man, Dennis White, a.k.a. Latroit. He was our first guest on the show some 8 years ago, and he's been on a few times if you want to go back in the archives and hear more about his story. This one's a little less of an interview and more of three friends sitting around drinking wine and just talking shit. Our guest today is Ramin from Supreme Beings of Leisure. You might remember them as one of the seminal trip-hop acts from the early 2000s, late 90s. They just released their new album, 22. It's out now with a remix of the song Desert by Latroit, which I think is coming out this week. We get into, a lot of history that Dennis and Ramin share, having gone to school at Berklee School of Music together, and their friendship and collaboration and this sort of collective that they've built with other friends over the years. And, I think we really dig into what it means to have your crew around you, people you can turn to for advice or inspiration or feedback or all that stuff, which is obviously super important for any career. I know it's been essential for me. We geek out a little bit on some music stuff, and we talk about how Ramin has managed to keep a career together through band changes, label challenges, technology, all that stuff, basically just never giving up. Let's get into it right now with Ramin Sakurai from Supreme Beings of Leisure.
I don't say it gratuitously. You have made a masterpiece here, You've made a timeless masterpiece of a record.
It is a really good record.
I've listened to this over and over, and like you can't. The magic of this record is you can't timestamp it to when it was released or made.
Totally.
It is timeless, and that is hard to do. It takes real gravitas as a producer.
Well, the cool thing is we're going to find out how you do it.
Sweet.
Okay.
That's why we're here.
All right.
Yeah.
All right. Well,
Great. So wait, let's do it. How do you guys know each other?
oh, wow, that's a story.
Craigslist missed encounters.
Music connection. Craigslist kind of got edged out of the whole
Encounter business.
This whole swiping. What happened to Craigslist?
Those encounters didn't go that well for anybody.
Yeah. Let's see. Well,
This is where this podcast goes to split screen. He tells his story, you pause it. I tell my story, we pause it.
That's awesome.
well, you want to start?
Nope.
So we met pretty much the first day of school at Berklee College of Music. I went to Berklee. I was accepted to Berklee when I was in 10th grade in high school, and then I went there like the summer before I met him.
Okay.
And I became friends with this guy named Krishna.
Seems like you would have been better than when I met you. If you went there
Nothing has changed, apparently.
Seems like you would have been a whole lot better when I met you.
I just based
You got a year ahead of me, and that's as good as you were.
years. So we're like, hey, let's, next year when we get out of high school, let's be roommates. So we were in this class called Listening and Analysis, which is basically like 300 kids in a
Sleeping.
auditorium.
I mean, all my classes were 300 kids sleeping, or at least I was sleeping.
In a massive auditorium, basically fresh out of bed, you know, with their hair all disheveled and shit like that. And so Christian and I are walking into this auditorium because they're kind of lining us up to like, okay, you guys go in the front row, and everyone's kind of, as they're walking into the auditorium, they line us up to our seats. So Dennis kind of cuts in between us. And so we, you know, my roommate and I couldn't talk to each other. We had to kind of talk around this guy.
Sounds about right.
And so, yeah, no shit. This guy, always in the middle of things. Button his ass in.
You're welcome.
So we became friends with him. So Krishna had a band called Psychotech, which eventually became, they changed their name to be Think Tree.
Okay.
And they kind of did pretty well, actually. And I don't know how it's all began, but he, I think, tried out for that band, and then he was looking for a bass player or something, and he asked me to try out for the band, I guess, right? Is that how it was?
No. Keep telling. Keep going.
I know, something like that. I think Krishna told me one day, hey, that guy Dennis we sit next to is looking for somebody to, you know, like a bass player for his band. Why don't you give him a call? And at that time, there was no cell phones, or we didn't have any phones in our dormitory. There was like basically a payphone at the end of the hall that you had to like stick a dime in and make a phone call. So I call him up, hey, what's up? Hey, I live down here, give me a, come by. And at the same time, Krishna's like, hey, he's got an apartment, we should probably rent it out. So I go down there, and his main objective is, I need a bass player for this band. So I'm like, so what's up with this apartment? Blah, 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 blah. Okay, yeah, it's 3-bedroom, 3-bedroom. I'm like, wow, this is a huge apartment. This is great, right? So he's trying to get me to play the bass, and he has this fretless bass, and that's like really the way to see if a guy really knows how to play the bass, because it's like there's a bit of precision involved.
Sure.
And I only knew like 2 or 3 songs that were fretless based songs. And so he goes, play something. And I'm like, okay. And I just, like in high school, I learned this song called Screen Kiss by Thomas Dolby. I just sat there and I figured it out. And it had like sliding harmonics and all these kind of like intervals, like tenths and all this kind of, well, I don't know if it was tenths, but so I started playing it for him. And he's like, wait a minute, whoa, whoa, whoa. You know that song? And I said, yeah. He goes, you got to show me this song. And I said, sure. And I started showing him how to play the song. And he was like, okay, you're in the band, and you don't want this apartment. He was just straight up at that point.
That's
so
amazing.
We had this, like, from that point on,
That's amazing.
there was like this kind of, we maintained this kind of connection throughout the last 35 years or so, where there was like a group of what we would say like sexy music from that time, where it was like Thomas Dolby, Talk Talk, David Sylvian, Roxy Music. Like there was like a certain bands that we gravitated towards, and we shared this common interest with these bands, and we're like, fuck, what if one day, if there was, well, anyways, we had like this weird thing about like Tears for Fears, like all these weird 80s bands that had this certain vibe. And even to this day, we still share these commonalities, I guess you could say, with these particular types of music. It would be like music you can make love to, and whatever, that kind of stuff, like sexy.
Or imagine other people. It wasn't happening
Be the
for us.
voyeurs of the musical voyeurs.
I'm going to steal a John Mulaney thing right now. In college, I was sexually experimental. The experiment was to not have sex the entire time during college, and I was very successful at that.
Yeah,
it worked.
Are you kidding me? You were very
So
successful.
that's hilarious.
Maybe not.
There's a big lesson before we move on in what you just said that I think people overlook, which is if you can play 2 or 3 songs really well, no one's gonna know that you don't know anything else,
That's true.
right?
Yeah,
I mean,
unless they ask.
yeah, but I mean, if you could go up and show what you can do for 2 or 3 songs on a fretless bass, no one's gonna question your ability beyond that.
Yeah, that's true.
Let's hear a fourth one.
Yeah, no, that doesn't happen.
No.
Right? People go into a job interview or a meeting or a project or whatever, and they're like, oh shit, I can only no, just fucking nail that shit, and everyone will just assume that you know everything.
Picked the right song.
Yeah.
I'll tell you what. But that's from
big.
that one song, like that was like the foundation of the beginning of our relationship, and thereon, and especially like bands like Talk Talk, we really connected with each other and a few other people that we know. Even to this day, where it's like we have this night where we get together and we share a vinyl night.
Okay.
And we sit here in the living room, and he's like, guess what? Guess what I just bought? And he bought the Spirit of Eden album. Was it Spirit of Eden? Yeah. And he bought it like a fresh vinyl of Spirit of Eden. He's like, I'm not going to open this up until you guys come here, and it'll be like the first play.
Nice.
So it's Duke, who's also a friend of ours from Berklee from that time.
Yeah.
And we all connected together through bands like this, you know what I mean? And even when I worked with Dennis in Detroit back in, was it 89 or something like that? The day that record came out, we all, him and his band Charmform at the time, we all sat on our backs in his studio just to listen to this record, and we were just, I guess, floored. Literally floored. We were already on the floor on our backs, but literally we were floored by this record. And so, like these little connections, with bands like this, kind of, I don't want to say kept us together, but like it gave us this connection. So
let me ask you this: what's the last record that floored you?
It's funny because like we live in a day and age now where most people just put out singles.
Right.
And the record, like the art of making a record where there's like killer artwork and the liner notes, and that's becoming sort of a lost art form in my opinion. But I gotta say the Kendrick Lamar record kind of floored me.
Okay.
Even Kanye's record was pretty darn good. And I say this because my son is a hip hop head, you know what I mean? He loves Drake, and I'm like, look, Drake is like a single guy, and I'm more of like an album guy. And
Sure.
I like the concept of an album where it's like writing a book or making a movie, and you have the chapters or the scenes and all that stuff. Mm-hmm. And it's like this collective work of art. But I would say Kendrick's album was really great.
Stunning.
Really great.
That record was
We actually
stunning.
listened to it here on one of our vinyl nights. We were listening to
Okay.
some of his music, and that first song off that record with that beat was just like amazing.
What about you?
The new Odessa record.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's a beast.
Wow.
My friend Eric
It's a beast.
mixed that.
Yeah.
It's up for a Grammy for it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, Christy's
Shout
now
out
saying
Eric,
that's
eh?
the best show she's ever been to. We went last month in Mountain View. It's up there.
All right.
It's up there. But yeah, it's an album.
I'll check that out.
I'm excited to listen to it. I haven't listened to it as a full body of work yet, but I really admire this guy, Eric J.
Nice.
His mixes are really special to listen to. So it's neat to hear you say that. That's good.
Yeah. Nice.
That's great.
That's cool. All right, so we'll get more into that, but take us back to the very beginning. You remember the first record you ever bought for yourself?
Yeah. Well, my mom bought it for me. The first.
We're gonna see if this qualifies.
The first rock album.
But like you chose it.
Well, yeah, kinda.
Okay.
And actually, I think she chose it for
Okay.
me. And there was a song
bending
on that
the rules a
album
little,
that
but
freaked
that's
me
all
the
right.
fuck out because I I was very young when this record came out. It was Rolling Stones' Black and Blue.
Okay.
And, I think there was like a disco song on that record. And then there was a song called Hot Stuff.
Uh-huh.
And just the vibe of that song kind of gave me like it kind of freaked me out a little bit. Like just the vibe of it. But it was that record.
Okay.
That was like the first one. And I remember like distinctly, it was like, Mick and Keith. Keith is facing this way and Mick is facing forward.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's a cool record.
What about you?
I think it was, the one I can remember was Tell Me Tomorrow, Smokey Robinson. 7-inch.
You chose that record?
Yeah, I chose it. I can't swear it was the first, but it's the first one I remember.
So, okay, what was your discovery of Smokey Robinson?
Oh, it would have been Urban Radio, so KSOL, San Francisco.
Wow, that's
Yeah.
amazing.
I mean, before that, it was like Cool and the Gang and Commodores and Gap Band and all that shit. I just never bought those.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's all pretty much I listened to growing up. I mean, my parents' music was rock and folk and whatever, and so I listened to some of that, but then, what I heard around the neighborhood.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure I've told the story to Smokey Records. I bought it. It's 49 cents or 29, whatever a 7-inch was back then.
Yeah.
And
crazy.
you play it 100 times, and then I was done playing it. I was like, that, and so I turned it into a frisbee. I didn't realize that a record that you needed to keep a record beyond. And so yeah, I broke it. Yeah, I don't still. That's the only record I think I did that with. But yeah, I was like 8 or something. I don't know.
That's great.
Yeah. You?
There was a summer where Cheap Trick released a record live at Budokan.
Mm-hmm.
And that was it. That was the record. And I had saved up $6.99 to go buy this record at Harmony House. I went there with my dad, and sold out. Couldn't get that thing anywhere. So I bought whatever the studio album before that was, maybe Dream Please or maybe something else. I bought it and I came home and I was just ready to love it, because obviously if they made live at Budokan, everything they did had to be great.
Isn't that a lesson?
That's a bit of a
it was.
already.
Oh man! And I just kept getting sadder and sadder the entire time. Is that I listened to it over and over, waiting for it to kick in, and it just never kicked in. Yeah. So my first, I bought a record story is just a story of disappointment.
Really?
Yeah.
It's a good.
Yeah.
So what was the moment when it became a career?
That's years and years later. Well, I guess just after I met Dennis, I dropped out of Berklee, and I was more interested in production, because while I was at Berklee, through Dennis and just listening to records and stuff like that, and I wasn't just interested in playing because originally the first time I went to Berklee, I was a guitar player. Second time I was a bass player. And then because I couldn't get into the MP&E program because my SAT scores were too low. I became a synthesis and sampling major.
Okay.
It just started that year, and MIDI just kind of came up a couple years before that. And
What was the first time you got paid a memorable amount of money to make music or do something musical?
Well, that was like 12 years after that. I mean, probably.
What was it?
It was probably when I got signed with Palm.
Mm-hmm. Really?
That demo. God, this is crazy. That demo, we'd made 100 CDs and a few cassettes. We passed them around. Nothing was. We had a lot of interest because we didn't send out our photos, and people didn't know what we'd look like. And I don't want to put people on the spot in the industry or anything like that, or what, but because trip hop was so new at that time, nobody could figure out if we were a white band or a black band, and that's sort of how things were ran, at least at that time
Sure.
in the music industry. There was like a white market, a black market, and that was it.
Still to some extent.
Yeah, exactly. So we sent this demo out. We got a lot of interest. We had 18 labels that were kind of questioning, where are we going to play next? Blah 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 blah. So we had a showcase set up at the Viper Room. All these people showed up. We played. It was dead after that. Like nobody wanted to sign us. So I had turned.
What was the problem?
Well, I personally, what we found out later through somebody that worked through Virgin was that they just didn't know how to market us because none of us were white, none of us were black. We were like Indian, Persian, Japanese.
So where are we
Dominican.
in the trip hop arc at that point? Like who was out?
Oh, just basically just Massive Attack.
Okay.
In Portishead, and that was it. This
Shadow,
this
or
was
not
like
Shadow?
96, 97, 98.
Okay.
Not even DJ Shadow at that time. I don't think he did his thing at that time. And so we played this thing. Nothing after that. I was like, I'm gonna give this a year. If nothing happens in a year, I'm out. Like if by the time my birthday next year, I'm gonna have to really reconsider what I need to do because I don't think I can hang in there for much more than that. So a year goes by. I'm doing the clowning. I quit my job as a courier. All that stuff goes on, and then this. I was just so fed up with the clowning thing because like kids are like kicking you in the butt and like doing like crazy. It was bad. It was bad. Like just like the movies, where you're just getting harassed. And so the license comes through for that movie. I had enough money to pay for rent for 3 months. And at the end of that, we got the record deal with Palm. We had a deal on the table with this company for Virgin, but it just wasn't enough money because we signed another deal with Moonshine and we wanted out of that. So a mutual friend of ours,
As you do.
Yeah, a mutual friend of ours who's a lawyer, his name is Arish. He got me out of this deal under the condition that we would owe them $15,000 to get out of this deal. So we're like, there's no way we can make a record for this amount of money and take a year off and do things. So we had that deal on the table, and a friend of ours named Bruno Gez, who ran a label called Quango as well, he was working for Palm at the time, and he's good friends and also works with Chris Blackwell. He's like, send this demo to this girl, Sheena. And I'm like, oh God, this is our last demo. It was literally the last CD. We pressed 100 CDs, we sent them all out. Last one, sent it out to her. So if any of you have those CDs out there, they're super fucking rare.
No kidding.
Yeah, and so she loved it. She came into town. She's like, I want to see you guys. Where are you playing? And we're like, we got nothing lined up. So we got a rehearsal room, played for her. I was like super sick that day, so I was like, you guys pack my shit up, I'm gonna go home. Anyway, she's like, she called our lawyer the next day, and she's like, I wanna sign these guys, what's the deal? Our lawyer, and the deal with this band that was $60,000 for the Virgin, and our lawyer, his name is Steven Sessa. I probably shouldn't even be saying this because Palm is probably gonna be so pissed.
We can cut that out.
Yeah, but he says,
Keep it in.
he says, yeah, they got a deal for $250,000 from Virgin, and they owe $15,000 to Moonshine, so $265 you got them. And they're like, yeah, no problem.
Sure.
So they signed us for $265, and I was like, what the fuck, are you serious? Wow, that's great. And then they gave us a publishing deal on top of that for another $250. So we had enough money to hold ourselves off for another year, and I could buy equipment and all that stuff.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, it was great. I mean, and when I signed put my name on the dotted line the day before my birthday the next
Oh,
year.
no way.
So it was one of
That's
those
cool.
things where it was like, it was like this cosmic lesson
Yeah.
that you should never fucking give up your dream, because it may come at the very last minute.
Yeah.
So that was my experience with that night. From that point on, I was like, I'm never gonna fucking give up, ever. Never question. You're you know, because it'll test your patience to no end.
Sure. I mean, that's great. First of all, get a good lawyer.
Yes.
Because,
He's a great guy.
a good lawyer should know that 60 grand or 250 to a company like that there's no difference. And,
Yeah,
and
I
what-
mean, maybe
and-
nowadays it is, but
maybe,
back then
but,
it wasn't, maybe.
But what they care about is getting something and not losing it to a
and
competitor.
I got to give credit to Chris Blackwell, because he was the only guy that could see through the color barriers and the whole thing, and he was like, he didn't give a shit about that, whereas like all these other American companies kind of did.
Yeah, I mean, that was going to be my question is, what do you think they got that everyone else didn't?
Well, I mean, we sold close to 300,000 units for one, which is good for a band like us, especially with no real touring or marketing. It was all based on the way we marketed ourselves was basically through the internet, which was pretty much in its infancy at that time. And we had a really good. The artwork seems to be like one of the factors that people gravitated towards. So like, we had displays at Virgin Records, and a lot of people were like, "I bought this record just because of the way it looked."
Sure.
And this is something that, like, going back to the lost art form of making an album, where artwork, liner notes, all that shit is that the packaging is, when you have an album and you can actually hold it, and it's like this tactile thing, and you can look at it and hold it and hear it and, put it on, that experience is getting lost.
I mean,
Well, maybe not so much now because people still love to listen to vinyl, but
Well, I wonder if it is, right? Because in some ways, the visuals are more important now. Right? Because how are people going to discover something? Through Instagram, through TikTok?
but the
they're
only
going to
thing is
discover it
when
visually.
it's this big on a screen, the thumbnail thing, and there's not like a thing you can pull out and look at, like the
Sure.
lyrics and and read who did what, because that was like a big thing for me, especially
Right.
because I got into production and engineering and whatever. Like, who played the guitar? Who played the bass? Who, like, you would be surprised who would be on these records. Like,
Sure.
I mean, for one thing that kind of blew my mind was back when I was a kid, and this is why I was like, wow, man, these guys are so great. There's a producer named Tim Freese Green, who was the producer for Talk Talk's records, the last few Talk Talk records, and he also produced, I believe, a few tracks, or if not the whole album of The Golden Age of Wireless, which was Thomas Dolby's record. And I was like, wow, this is a great producer that nobody really talks about or knows about. And when I was in Berklee, I had a friend named Tony Paris that got me into The Art of Noise and Trevor Horn. And that was probably the moment when I decided to become a producer, because his productions were just freaking immaculate. And that kind of put me on a different trajectory at that point, where I was like, oh man, I should get into MP&E and engineering and figuring out how to make things sound good. And because I wasn't really the type of guy that was a virtuoso on any instrument. I could play and maybe carry a tune on these instruments, but I understood them enough where I could say, hey, you should probably change that chord or try this inversion or whatever, where you could communicate to the musicians better. And I felt like my role as a producer would have been a better fit for me professionally,
Okay.
as opposed to like being a studio musician or something like that, where there's way better players than I am. But
What was it that Chris Blackwell understood about your group that other people that passed on it didn't understand?
well, I think he just liked the songs. It wasn't just how do we market these guys, because there's a Puerto Rican guitarist, an Indian bass player, a Persian Japanese, God knows what keyboard player, and a Dominican singer, which nobody really would know. You would just look at us and go, where the fuck are these guys from? Like it was just one of those. I think people just didn't understand who we were and where we were from, and he, and also at that time when we started recording that record, Jerry was pregnant. And we were scared to tell him that.
Jerry Soriano, by the way.
Jerry Soriano.
That's James Soriano.
Oh, you might be related. Yeah, somewhere down the line.
Yeah, jump ahead to this record. So, how does you go in the studio in 2022? How does that sound come together?
The difference.
When did you start this project?
So this is our first album in 14 years. We haven't done anything in 14 years.
Yeah.
But I always kept writing ideas for it. Throughout the years, I would go take trips and just do these writing. I would wake up at 4 a.m. and just write throughout the day. And then, I'd be in Italy or wherever and just write. And so I acquired about, I think, songs that eventually became tailored for SBL. I got about 50 or so ideas to show Jerry. So when the time came out, and I kept asking Jerry, "Hey, let's do a record. Let's do this. Let's do that." She just wasn't ready. She was going through some personal things like divorce. She had a divorce that she went through recently. Eventually, around 2018. I showed her these 40 or 50 or so ideas, and we, cherry picked through those. We got down to eventually about 16 of these ideas. And when we kind of when I laid out the record and just kind of was like, that's a pretty good record. We decided to bring Rick back into the band because our former guitar player, Jeff, just kind of disappeared, unfortunately, because he's such a fantastic guitar player and musician. But so Rick came back into the band, and I would love both of those guys to be in the band. That would just make the best. But he came back in the band, and I was like, you know what? Let's just replace these songs. So I took out about half the record, half the songs, and we eventually replaced those songs, and that's what we have now. Yeah. But we wanted to kind of revisit certain sounds, like the guitar sounds from the first album, certain kind of retro future type vibe, so that's pretty much how it went. As far as the difference, now, we can do everything at home.
Yeah.
Whereas the first album, we're doing everything on tape and transferring things from Pro Tools and our demos to, that were also on tape to Pro Tools, then on another tape, and
Sure.
it was just a technical.
Oh yeah, it's much easier now.
Yeah, it was a technical mess.
I bet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So.
So you said Rick came back in the band. So you guys broke up though after the first album, yeah?
Yeah, after the first album, we had personal issues with Kieran in particular, unfortunately, and Rick decided to kind of go off with Kieran and do a new project called Bittersweet. And Jerry and I kind of broke off and did our own thing.
What do you think you learned about partnerships, relationships from that experience?
Me or?
Yeah.
Well, I think we all kind of learned that we all have to be kind of giving. It has to be a team effort. It can't just be this I did this, I did that, blah 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 kind of thing. You know, which kind of what happened in the first album. Like we're all just kind of fighting over stupid things.
Yeah.
And it wasn't really
bands
like,
are hard.
It wasn't like I didn't really care personally. I just wanted things to just keep going, and so did Chris. Chris Blackwell, that is, and but he eventually understood that it was just not going to work out. So we broke it off, and they went their separate ways, and everything was somewhat cool. I think Jerry would disagree because there were some things said publicly that they shouldn't have said. Rick never said that stuff, but Kieran did. And so when Rick came back in, we always stayed friends with Rick. It was just, the door was always open for him. So he gladly came back, and everything, because we're much older and more understanding, and
Sure.
we just want things to work out, and we're doing this album for the fans that really have been asking for so many years. Like, when's the next record?
Yeah.
They're not asking for the next single; they want a record.
Yeah.
And that says a lot because we're an album band. We're not a singles. We're not like the type of artist that just puts out singles, and then says, all right, here's your record, and none of the songs really kind of work together. But the funny thing is if you heard like one song and then another song from this record, it's like they all don't kind of work, but when you hear it in order, it does kind of work. So,
Yeah. That's cool.
yeah. Yeah. So, still making records.
So what are we doing in between?
In between this record,
Yeah, I mean,
Even
I think
since,
it's,
You've been doing it for 14 years, pal.
well,
so you put out 4 records, right, in 22 years?
A lot of that time I was doing music for TV and film.
Okay.
And then unfortunately, my parents were not doing so well physically and mentally, and I had to take some time off to help them out, and just juggling, between those two things.
Sure.
And I mean, for me, family always comes first. So
Yeah.
that was. And unfortunately, my father passed away a couple years ago, but he was super supportive, always supportive, and so was my mom. And so when I told him, I'm going to do another Supreme Beings of Leisure record, he was pretty happy about that because he loves the record.
Nice.
And he was always like, why don't you have more horns on your album? You need more horns. So I was like, all right, I'll make more horns on this record.
Good call.
Yeah, that's great.
I'll buy that.
Yeah. And Dennis has been super supportive as well.
Yeah, so you guys have like this little collective, Dave.
Yeah, he's been very supportive.
So tell me about that. How just kind of how you support each other, and what role does that play for you, having your guys that you turn to for?
Well, there's a gravity to being able to lean in to friendships that go back 30 years that is special and unique and really valuable and fruitful. And it's literally like planting a seed, and then 30 years later, what's the tree look like?
Sure.
When it's a sapling and it's younger, it's a little all over the place, and who knows, anything can happen. But when a tree becomes established, it is a matter of record. And I'm not entirely sure how to describe what it's like beyond comfortable and secure and creativity, and to what you were saying earlier about just sort of giving more towards it rather than sort of taking to it and keeping score who's doing it, whatever.
Right.
And creativity doesn't have an age. The interesting thing about creativity is that in my experience, it ages nicely like wine that's been well taken care of over a period of time. That's the neat thing about creativity. I work with a lot of friends from 30 years ago, but I also work with you had artists who are younger in their 20s coming up,
Sure.
and it's interesting to have a disproportionate relationship to younger artists when we're just dealing with each other creatively.
Right.
Everybody's the same age creatively. There's something interesting about that.
Yeah, and also, you know,
Interesting.
like we'll ask each other, you know, hey, how does this sound to you? Like, is there something I'm missing? You know, and there's this level of trust that I can count on him to, or Duke for that matter. Like, what do you think of this song? Like, I feel like I'm missing something. And we'll kind of analyze and be frank with each other. Like, you know, maybe you should change this, maybe you should change that, or whatever. But it's like ears you can trust because you've known them for so long, and
Right.
you know, like the track record and so forth. You know, you know what to expect, and sometimes the most unexpected things may come out of it, as far as advice. It's like, oh shit, I didn't think about that. You know, like, wow, yeah, okay, cool, I'll try that out.
Sure.
Yeah.
If you push against a young tree, it's going to bend a lot. If you push against an established tree, it's not really going to bend that much. So if you tell a young tree, if you push against it and say, this song sucks, it's going to bend over, and that's going to have a huge impact on it.
Sure.
If you tell somebody you've known for 30 years, you're not going to say this sucks, but like, no.
Yeah.
It's not going to bend, it's not going to affect you that much, and you have absolute trust in the good nature and good intent of comments like that.
So that, I mean, that's interesting. I think, you know, at the same time, I'm sure there's lots of exceptions to this, but hit music, popular music, tends to come from 20-year-old people in their 20s. So when you're making this new record, how conscious? I mean, music's changed a lot, and it hasn't a lot, right? And
You know, I try not to get too influenced by outside music.
how do you do that?
By not listening to other people's stuff.
Yeah,
I'll just put myself in a room and just be like, okay, what do I feel?
yeah,
We wanted to really kind of revisit certain sounds from that first album to kind of give it that nostalgic, you know, revisit that nostalgia from that first album. And even like their artwork is sort of a kind of a revisitation from that first album. So, you know, there's a song, our first single was called Full Circle, so we wanted to have this kind of like, hey, we're doing this full circle thing. Rick is back in the band. We're kind of bringing back some of our older sounds. Because our last two records, we kind of went off on a trajectory that just kind of went just way out there in a way. And this record is a representation of all three of those records. Like there's a bit of all those three albums on this record.
yeah.
So I think this album, is the clearest definition of our sound. And I really tried to make that like very apparent, which took some time because to make all those different sounds work together and that's the beauty of making a record, because if you're just putting out singles, people will be like, what the fuck? You know, like what is all this? Like, why is there a rock song and then a chill out song? And
Sure.
But when you listen to it in order, it kind of works.
Yeah.
So, you know, like we have a lot of guest musicians on this record that kind of helped us kind of bring that sound out. And most of those guys have appeared on our past records or other projects as well. Like Marty Friedman, for instance. Marty Friedman's the guitar player for Megadeth.
Okay.
And you wouldn't expect like Megadeth
not
and
at all.
Supreme Beings of Leisure to kind of do something together.
Together at last.
Yeah. But Marty is a fucking genius, man.
Yeah, that's cool.
Guy's a genius. And same with Lily Hayden and a lot of these other people, Satnam Ramgotra, and and they did this for no money. they do this for no money. They just do it just to be a part of it. And,
Nice.
and we had a few other people like Ramin Jaffe from Foo Fighters. So I mean, it was just a blessing, really, like to get their flavor in there. You know what I mean? Because it just added so much more.
Yeah, I bet.
I would have never done some of the things that they did. That's why that's the fun part of being a producer is you can just like bring friends in that have this flavor.
Sure.
You know, and just add in the spice. It's like cooking. And that's why we did the cooking thing today, because there's this parallel with cooking and music. It's like add this, add that, and then you have this new dish. It's like and then let's have a little wine with it to kind of wash it down. There's, it's funny because my friend Tony that got me into producing, you remember Tony Paris, right? You would know him if you saw him, who got me into Trevor Horn's music and Art of Noise. He eventually got out of music, and he's a talented motherfucker, but he became this well-known chef in New York. And I was like, if I wasn't a musician, I probably would be a chef too, because there's this like kind of parallel, you know what I'm saying?
Sure.
It's like this, because you just want to create something and make something new and something somebody's never heard or tasted. It's there's that parallel.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's something about enjoying the process, right? Because what you're talking about, like, you could easily have probably done all of it yourself in the studio.
It wouldn't be the same.
Samples. I'm not saying it'd be the same, but it'd be a lot easier.
Yeah, true.
Right? It'd be faster and cheaper and whatever. And, by the same token, you could order out a great meal or right? And
exactly.
But I think I think there's something to enjoying the process, right?
And sharing the experience. And this was all done during the COVID lockdown, so it was like,
oh wow,
it was sort of like, okay, let's send this to Japan.
Yeah.
And then Marty lays down his track in Japan, sends it back. So same with Lily, even though they're right around the corner, and Rami is out in the valley. It just made sense. It just made total sense. And it worked out very well, thankfully. But I'm super grateful for those guys because they added just so much to it. It was like, holy cow, this is a different song here, So this song right here is the one with Marty. Mm-hmm. And we had Durga McBroom and this girl, Monica Reed, singing backgrounds. Durga's one of the background singers for David Gilmour and Pink Floyd.
Oh, cool.
So I told her, I was like, hey, at the very end when Marty does a solo, just do that great gig in the sky thing, you know what I mean? You're like, whoa, and she did it.
Nice.
It was like, holy cow, like I never thought that, I would have never imagined that.
Uh-huh.
But because she was there, and I was like, oh man, you know what? Like just go off, just ad-lib, just do that. It just worked out. And the funny thing was, like, I did a full charcuterie board for her, and she lives in Italy, so she was like super appreciative of that. Yeah, she was like, bring out the salami. She loved it.
Nice. That's so cool. So so what's the vision for this record? Are you gonna tour?
Yeah. Hopefully, yeah, I think so. We're going to put together a live band. I think this time, because for the last 3 albums, tours, I was the keyboard player. Mm-hmm. I think on this one, I'm going to be the bass player. And we're going to get it, because I suck at the keyboards. I'd hate to tell you, Dennis, I just suck at it.
I'm noticing a theme here.
I'm a better bass player than a keyboard player, I think, but just slightly better.
Okay.
Like I said, I'm like the jack of all trades, master of none. But back to promotion, and back to what you were saying about visuals earlier. So the visual aesthetic has always been really important to your project, to your music project. And the aesthetics, I don't know if you've seen any of the SPL stuff on Instagram.
Yeah.
Posts. Those aesthetics are incredible.
Yeah, there's a guy that we have been working with. He is Jerry's brother-in-law. His name is Andy Moretta, and I mean, his eye is just amazing. He's a Clio Award winner. Works for Kawasaki presently, but he has been gracious enough to offer his services for us and put together our, like we need his eye on everything,
Sure.
pretty much, because he knows our aesthetics. And when it comes to photos, videos, online posts, he's sort of the director of everything when it comes to that. We trust his.
And he did the animation for Happy People.
Oh, cool.
That my brother Chris
I didn't know
directed.
that. Oh, wow, okay.
He did. And his animation and my brother's direction was massively influential in the UK 20 years ago in advertising. So we did this little music video for some dance music song.
Amazing.
And advertising just sort of took it and ran with it. But that's to his eye.
Yeah. He had this. He was sort of like the pioneer almost of flash animation videos for music.
Yeah.
So when we did Never the Same, because back then the bandwidth for internet was so bad that you could only get away with kind of flash animation
Sure.
to really keep up with that.
Yeah.
I don't think it was even DSL back then. It was.
No, it was 13 frames per second though, more or less. And it just occurs to me now that will be a look.
Yeah,
You should
probably.
make your shit look exactly like
Yeah,
that.
right, why not?
That
Makes
is, it's your look anyway.
Yeah.
But
In a way.
in cycles of 20 years, that's do it before I do.
Yeah, I get it, and it's kind of what I was saying before that it's changed, right? You're 100% right. Kids are not sitting the way we were and opening up the gatefold and reading all the credits and all of that. But the flip side is everything is more visual now than it used to be.
So Ramin and I are going to go to Westwood and put flyers on cars.
Yeah.
Well, what I think you have going for you is that there is an audience who remembers the band or remembers the time or the era and has the money to spend for a great night out, right? And isn't out 5 nights a week, but's out 1 night a month or 2, and will go have a really memorable time and spend real money. And it's not the dollar drink crowd.
No.
Although I don't know, is there a dollar drink? I think it's not a $10 drink crowd. But you know what I mean? And so, obviously it's great to catch some young fans.
Yes. And we have. There's some people that are discovering us now it's interesting to see that. And some of my son's friends are sharing the music now, which is
cool.
really interesting because they're like, wow, this is really cool. But again, like you said, like things are super visual. So it's like, I think our next step is to just to catch people's eyes now, because that's what it takes. It's not, the music is one thing, you need the full package.
Sure.
And the platform, so, and cater to that platform, whether it's TikTok or this, that, YouTube, whatever, and keep them engaged, which is super tricky. So, that's the hard part.
Well, tonight was a big step.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, thank you. Thanks to you, man. Thank you. Yeah.
Let's do a lightning round.
What's that?
That's where I just ask questions and then you take as long as you want to answer them.
Oh, okay. Get enough time on that card?
Does that sound like a lightning round?
Yeah. All right.
All right. What movie have you seen the most in your life?
The lightning round. This is where you just
Probably The
go like
Matrix.
this.
Okay.
The original Matrix?
How many times?
Oh, God, hundreds.
Yeah.
Yeah, really. Like,
Because I'll put on something like I love Star Wars. I love The Matrix. I'll put it on and not even look at it, but because I'm so familiar with it, it's like okay, it's something boring to watch
Right.
that I can work to it
Yeah.
without, and it's almost like I'm scoring to it in a way, which is kind of ironic because I actually had a song in this Animatrix series, but I just love that fucking movie, man. That, and I like The Mandalorian, which is a series, so I'll like put that whole thing on and just work to it while I'm with the sound down.
That's
Okay. What about you?
I don't really know. It's definitely not a movie that I put on. It's a movie that's just on.
Really?
Yeah, like So right now I'm hoping it's Trading Places.
Oh, nice.
'Cause I fucking love that movie. We watched it last
it's a
night.
great movie.
It's in our at least once or twice a year rotation.
Oh, okay.
My son loves it, so that helps. But it's like that, or it's like Planes, Trains, and Automobiles, or
Nice. Okay, I
It's
get
just
it.
one of those movies that I think it has to be a holiday movie because it
Yeah.
just comes on multiple times, and like you see it on the guide, and you like it's halfway through, but you just tap in and finish it,
Yeah.
or you watch it and then you go do something else, whatever.
Okay. Movies that you play on purpose, because that does not fucking count.
No, it counts. That's the point.
It doesn't count. It's just on.
Yeah, that's
It's
the
just
point.
It's passive.
But you don't turn it off.
Okay, fine. What about movies that you think to yourself, you know what? I'm a grown adult. How about I make a decision for myself?
Well, you taught me something recently, which I'm actually is
Don't do that.
no, it was good, which I'd never thought of, which is that you watch a movie and you like it, so you watch it a couple more times right away,
Yeah.
which I thought was cool. Because you get more. That was your point. Is you get more the next time you see it in the next. But I usually wait a few years and I think, I can't watch that again right now.
Well, there's a thing that happens where you feel like if you know how the movie ends or what happens in it, you don't have to see the movie anymore.
Which is a stupid idea. The whole spoiler thing is stupid because the songs that we love the most are the ones that we've heard the most.
No, that's true.
right.
no one's like, don't spoil that song for me.
That's true.
in a movie, in any frame of a movie, there are 5 things that you can fully pay attention to. The direction, the sound design, the score, the acting, the lighting, the cinematography. There's 6. I mean, you could just keep going on.
Yeah.
My brother Chris, who's a filmmaker, gave me great perspective on a way to get through the worst movie ever, is just to understand that the people that are working on this movie are giving it their best work. So ignore the
those
shit that
people are-
obviously suck, but there are people that are trying really hard. There's something that is good that is happening
Yeah,
there.
yeah.
And he's right. He's right. You just, once you identify that, that's enjoyable. And if you have a movie that you like, Guy Ritchie's one of my favorites.
Sure.
Oh, sure.
Dude, I will watch. I've seen Snatch and The Gentleman no fewer than 80 times, and every single time I watch it, there is something to the wardrobe, something to dial into, and the people that are working at the height of their craft in film, every one of them are all trying to tell a story with what they're doing.
Sure.
If you really tune in to the wardrobe, they're trying to tell a story about what that guy was doing that day or tell you something about this dude. Everything serves a narrative purpose, or a lot of it does. That stuff fascinates me. And once you really geek out on it, it's just, it's a rabbit hole.
Okay.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Who's somebody you've learned a lot from that you never met?
Oh, well, I would have to go back to guys like Trevor Horn. Mm-hmm. Just because I've analyzed his music so much, and well, I tried to emulate some of that, but you can't really do it without his gear. Yeah, Trevor Horn, probably guys like that, like
Nice.
from back then. Yeah.
Sure.
What about you?
Oh, I don't know. Seth Godin. Who do I read? I mean, it's all shit that I read.
Well, that would be the way.
Yeah. Who else do I read? Stephen Covey. Fucking. Yeah, just reading. I try to read everything I can.
That's great. What about you, D?
You know, probably people with YouTube tutorials. I don't know their names.
You're absolutely
I just type in, like, how do I use this new thing on Ableton and click? Under 5 minutes, this guy. So those dudes.
There's an author that I'm really into, Joe Nesbo. He writes, he's a Danish, Norwegian crime writer.
Okay.
And he's got this series, I think there are 10 books, about this, great cop who's an alcoholic. And I'm always fascinated by, like, flawed people, obviously.
He's fascinated by me.
But,
I think we got something in common here.
but like, how do you make
Fascinated by flawed people?
10 books interesting, right? And the same character. And, lately I've been like, how do you make us, we're both huge Seinfeld fans. Like, how do you keep something interesting for that long?
Right.
How do you make a music career that lasts, where you have to reinvent and come up with new ideas and make shit that's fits together, but it's not the same? All of that, that fascinates me.
So what was it for Seinfeld for you? What do you think kept that going for 9 seasons?
Oh, for them, I think it was I figured it out on the last go-round. I just watched it start to finish with my son. And it was the single-minded focus on, we don't give a fuck if this makes any sense, but if it's funny, it goes. That's it. If we get a laugh, and I forget where it was, something in season 7, 8, where you're like, this is just nonsense, but it's fucking funny, and that's enough.
That's cool.
Nothing else matters. All right, last one. If we work together, what's something I would hear you say over and over?
Do it again.
Oh!
Okay. All right.
Now he understands the lightning round. You could have just done that for the last 20 minutes.
One more time. Try it again. One more time, but with more passion.
That's great. No, that's great.
That's great.
More oomph.
Yeah, no, I love it. That's good. Yeah, you know what? James taught me that. No, he did, because when he's been doing this show with me now for 7 years.
Wow.
Against his will, at least at the beginning, and we would do intros and stuff, and or I'd have to read ads or whatever, and I'd get through something and feel like, oh, that one was pretty good, and he'd go, do it again, and he was right. And he was right, and the second or the third or sometimes maybe the first, but sometimes you got to do it.
But it doesn't hurt to have a couple.
Josh,
No, you're
that was
absolutely
so
right.
good. I just want to hear it again.
Yeah.
So that's good, and it reminds me of something I read. Now I forget who it was that taught me that, about feedback, because I'm obsessed with how we give and receive feedback in life, because I think it affects our lives, and most people are really bad at both sides of that. The giving and receiving, and I heard an analogy once that was like, most feedback is like this: sing happy birthday. Okay, now do it better.
Yeah. Makes sense. I get it.
Hey, this is super fucking fun.
Thank
For
you,
who?
man. Yeah, it was.
For James. No, not for James. I mean, for me, I had wine
James, have another glass.
and a delicious meal. We're definitely not doing Rebel Radio anymore without food and wine.
That is what I'm talking about.
Awesome.
Well, thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you for hosting. Thank you for
Thank
cooking.
you, man. I appreciate it.
And
This is amazing.
yeah, let's do it again.
Absolutely.
Yo, go. That was Ramin Sakurai on Rebel Radio. I hope you enjoyed it. I know I did. I think Dennis and I are going to do some more wine-soaked roundtables, so hopefully you enjoyed this one, and you'll enjoy the next one coming up on Rebel Radio. Peace.